Safran jet engine, which will have a thrust of what 120 kilonewton. This proposal has now gone to the Cabinet Committee on Security and perhaps be cleared before August 15th. And this engine is ultimately going to power our advanced multi-role combat aircraft, indigenous, the future jet fighters that India is going to produce. The private sector has bidded for the AMCA, that is Advanced Multi-Role Combat Aircraft, and already 3 companies have been shortlisted in that. Over the years, India has been buying jet engines from Russia, from France. None of these people, even under the transfer of technology, were willing to give the source code. Safran, what is going to happen is, this is going to have a 100% Indian IP address. Jet engines, very few countries can make. China has really moved in leaps and bounds as far as jet engine goes. India needs to watch and India needs to compete and compete very fast.
Hello and a very warm welcome to all. You're watching Point Blank and my name is Aisha Varma. In this episode, we discuss India's fighter jet engine push, which is at an inflection point and which is raising core questions about what has really changed since Modi's call for an indigenous engine, how far technology sharing will go, where China stands, and more. Joining us on this is HT's executive editor, Mr. Shishir Gupta. Sir, namaskar. So in his 2025 Independence Day speech, the Prime Minister had urged the Indian defense sector to produce an indigenous fighter jet with an Indian engine. 1 year later, have we achieved any milestone in this?
See, within 1 year, what has happened is that the clarion call that the Prime Minister gave for the country to produce a jet fighter with an indigenous engine has really gained momentum. First of all, is that the private sector has bidded for the AMCA, that is Advanced Multi-Role Combat Aircraft. Okay, and already 3 companies have been shortlisted in that. Right? You have Tata's, you have Bharat Forge, and you have L&T with their PSU partners who have been shortlisted. But what is equally important is that within 1 year, joint venture between Safran and Gas Turbine Research Establishment of the DRDO, that is coming to fruition for an jet engine which is going to be 100% Indian IP owned. Now, this jet engine, which is the Safran jet engine, which will have a thrust of what 120 kilonewton. My understanding is that this proposal has now gone to the Cabinet Committee on Security and perhaps be cleared before August 15, 2026. The whole idea is that this Safran GTRE jet engine, you will have 9 prototypes which will be made of 120 kilonewton thrust, and then it will be expanded to 140 kilonewton thrust. And this engine is ultimately going to power our advanced multi-role combat aircraft, indigenous, made by private sector, and the future jet fighters that India is going to produce. So it's a very welcome development. What is more important is that in the past 12 years, the Indian defense industry has really grown. I mean, it was just doing exports of about $0.28 billion in 2013-2014. Today, it stands at $4.1 billion and it is growing by the day. The biggest industry which is showing momentum right now is the defense industry, be it drones, be it ammunition, be it platforms, be it C-295 aircrafts. So what you're looking at, this is really the sunrise industry, and all thanks to what this government, particularly what the Prime Minister has done under the Atmanirbhar Bharat rubric. And this jet engine, which we've been actually looking for a long time, is perhaps now going to be a reality. And that is what is more important about it.
Would you be able to give us more details about the Safran GTRE tie-up? And do you know whether France will be sharing the source code?
Okay, so what has happened is, see, initially we bought 36 Rafale fighters. They are powered by what is called the SNECMA M88 engine. Okay, this is made by Safran. This is basically a 88 kilonewton engine. Now, what had happened was that France initially asked us that would you want to join in producing more of the same M88 engines, to which we sort of dilly-dallied. And then France also asked us that would you be part of the future combat air system, or what is called the FCAS, to produce an engine in which Spain was involved, Germany was involved. Again, we dilly-dallied. Then France actually proposed that, Safran join hands to produce an engine. Now, this proposal is actually a 5-year-old proposal. Mm-hmm. I mean, give or take, 5-year-old approximately. So now what's going to happen is that over the years, India has been buying jet engines from Russia and has been buying jet engines from France. For Russia for powering the MiG series or the Sukhoi series, from France for powering the Rafale fighters. But none of these people, even under the transfer of technology, were willing to give the source code or the hot section or the crystal blade technology, which is critical to the entire engine making. When we talk about, this tie-up with the Americans to have the F404 engines or F414 engines, again, we are running into the same thing. We do not get that critical technology. Now, with Safran, what is going to happen is this is going to have 100% Indian IP address. This engine is going to be made in India. This engine is going to be a powerful 120 kilonewton engine. This engine is going to power your future fighters, be it AMCA, be it twin engine deck-based fighters for the aircraft carriers. So it's a huge development. See, jet engines very few countries can make. And you can just simply say very clearly, US, UK, France, and now China. So India, if this thing comes to fruition and fructifies, and if the CCS clears this thing, this is going to be a huge game changer. Because then you will not have to rely on a third country in case the red flag goes up. So that is why this engine becomes important. 9 prototypes will be produced. They'll be checked. They'll be actually certified, because that's a long process again. And then you will move into the 140 kilonewton engine which is going to power perhaps are the 6th generation fighters or the 5th generation fighters. This is what's going to happen. So it's a huge development.
So how is China placed in the jet engine race?
China initially was trying to reverse engineer Russian engines or the American engines, the LEAP engines. The civil engineers reverse engineered it and then tried to produce jet engines. Now they produced WS-10 and now they produced WS-15. Now, from the Indian perspective, the unfortunate development is that the WS-15 has started to work. It's a powerful engine. It's a 180 kilonewton engine. It is being used to power the J-20 fighter, which is a 5th generation fighter. And China has really moved in leaps and bounds as far as jet engine goes. So that is why, if you see recently after the May 2020 transgressions by the PLA, China deployed the J-20 fighters in Hotan Air Base, in Gargunsa, which is just across Demchok, in Lhasa, and in Nengchi, which is across Arunachal Pradesh. So China's jet engine technology has really come of the age. It's powering both the J-10, the JF-17, and now the J-20. So the WS-15 engine has come up in a big way, and India needs to watch, and India needs to compete, and compete very fast. It cannot hold on to the Indian PSUs which actually try and drag things. And it has to have some significant change within the DRDO. The reform has to take place to ensure that faster decision making is there. There are few delays and there are very limited cost overruns. This is what it is all about. But China is a player now. And that is a matter of serious concern to us.
So, what is India's long-term roadmap for true engine sovereignty beyond Safran and GE in terms of timelines and the revival of the Kaveri class indigenous engines as well?
The DRDO had been talking to various countries, Russia, Britain, France, even US, about developing the Kaveri engine. Now, the Kaveri engine which the DRDO produced or the GTRE produced was about 40 kilonewton thrust, which is hardly anything. So now they have again revived the Kaveri engine, and they are now looking for a Kaveri engine of a 80 kilonewton thrust. So that work is on. Now, simultaneously with that, the Indian private sector has come into play. Thankfully, simultaneously into that, the reforms within the DRDO are taking place. So what is going to happen is that there is possibility of a revival of a Kaveri engine. And you may come up with an engine which is between 80 kilonewton and then you can expand. Okay, so it becomes a technology demonstrator and then you expand into your capacities. See, engine development is a very, very labor intensive and a cost intensive process. I mean, it takes nearly about $10 to $15 billion to develop an engine. So it's not a simple thing, but it is kind of it's a gold standard kind of thing, that this country can make a jet engine. So that is why this becomes important. And this is why the Narendra Modi government is, particularly the Prime Minister, is very keen on a jet engine and are very keen on an indigenous AMCA fighter. So the private sector for the first time is getting involved in aircraft engines, aircrafts and missiles also. So the entire gamut of defense sector is right now open. I mean, there are hurdles. The PSUs are still the way they are. The Defense Production Department is still the way they are. But, the Prime Minister is pushing, the Defense Minister is pushing, and the entire ministry is responding to that in a very, very positive way. So this is what's happening right now.
So why go for the Safran GTRE when India is getting the GE 414 engine from the US?
Safran, GE 404, GE 414. These are all three separate chapters. And these are basically giving India an option to have a jet engine which is, which goes towards indigenous content. What has happened is right now that India has a contract with GE for 212 F404 engines, which are going to empower the Tejas Mark 1A, 1 Alpha aircraft engine. As of now, I believe 9 engines have already landed, but there is a supply chain issue in that. But there is no confusion about the intent of supply. The intent of supply is there from the US side, so to speak. But there is a delay in the supply chain and GE has to do that. Until such time GE doesn't do that, it's difficult to power an aircraft for that. Second thing is that the Indian government decided that GE in a joint venture with HAL would have initially what was called a 100% TOT transfer on GE F414 engine, which is essentially an engine which is going to power the first 2 squadrons of the AMCA aircraft. Now, what is happening is that initially it was that there is going to be 100% TOT transfer. But now my understanding is that TOT transfer is around 70%. But the problem is the contract has to be signed between the two sides, and I believe the contract has been signed. But the work has to start between GE and HAL, and that is what is lagging. There is reform that is taking place within HAL, which is actually a PSU which has got many things on its plate. But once the F414 engine comes in, it will be actually a game changer in many ways, because it will power not only Tejas Mark II but AMCA, and it is going to be an engine. Some 99 of these engines are going to be be made initially. But again, the problem here lies is that the GE will not share the source code. In fact, nobody shares the source code, not even the Russians. And so there is no source code share, there is no share of the hot section, there is no share of the crystal blade technology. But the fact remains is that India will have these engines which will power its own aircraft. So right now what is happening is that India is looking at various options. They are mutually exclusive and trying to see, that the combat strength of its Indian Air Force remains at a level which has teeth. The other part is that, while India is looking at the aircraft engines and the jet fighters, the Indian missile technology has gone in a very big way. They're looking at the other part of it, particularly after the Iran-US war, because this war is now stretched into the 6th month. So we are looking at long drawn-out wars. You're not looking at short 10-day intensive conflicts. So that is why you have to be prepared. You have to have a missile inventory. You have to have a drone inventory. So all these 3 sectors are being looked at. And the Indian private defense sector actually is coming up in a very big way. It's actually what's happening is really a revolution is taking place within the Indian defense sector. If the Indian PSUs really push their effort up, you will be seeing a change very soon where India won't have to rely on any other country for its defense requirement. And there is a very strong possibility that India may supply ammunition to even advanced powers like the US. This is what's going to happen. But the Indian jet engine it's a defining moment. And perhaps the Modi government will clear the Safran engine before August 15, 2026.
So China has a 5th generation jet in the form of the J-20. India does not at this point. Should India look towards getting the F-35 from the US or the Su-57 from Russia to plug the gap?
See, this question is still being debated within the government as to whether India should be looking at a 5th generation fighter from either Russia or from US. The answer is not really very simple. While there is a demand from the Indian Air Force about acquiring some 2 squadrons of a 5th generation fighter, it is still not clear whether India will be looking at F-35 or India will be looking at Su-57. But there is a much more serious question than this. See, after the F-35 came under a missile attack from the Iranians using the heat-seeking missile, the whole concept that the 5th generation fighter is actually, it's an invisible stealth fighter, that has gone now. So now you have to look at it, really do you want to invest that kind of money if a heat-seeking missile can take care of a 5th generation fighter? It can be J-20, it can be F-35, it can be Su-57. But the fact remains is, Indian Air Force has pitched a demand of 2 squadrons of Su-57, but the government is still to take a view whether it is going to be Su-57, F-35, or maybe enhance whatever it has on its own. Because the bigger problem is not this. The bigger problem is that one has to look at unmanned combat air systems now which are in operation. One has to look at standoff missiles, given that the entire war has now changed into standoff missiles. In the Iran-US war has shown us. One has to look at the viability of whether do we want to have a 5th generation fighter or not. So it's a big debate. There is a demand. There is a concern about it, but the answer is still not there. Do we look at a 5th generation fighter or do we look at a longer range missile? Do we look at a 5th generation fighter or do we look at unmanned combat air systems which supplement the fighter systems? So it's an unmanned versus manned debate that is still going on. It's the technology debate. Do we invest in missiles? Because ultimately there's a limited amount of money which has been used for all this. So that question is still remains.
So thank you so much for joining us and providing us with all of that insight. With that, it's a wrap, but do stay tuned, especially for next week's segment of Point Blank.